Hey Lifers, Dustin here, and today I want to take a look at the 2018 SEC West schedule. This schedule was released by the conference a couple of days ago for all teams in the conference. I already did a video that I just uploaded on the East, which you can check out right there. So let's go ahead and look at the SEC West schedule, and make sure to let me know what you think down in the comments at the end. So if we start with Alabama, they opened the season against Louisville in Orlando at the Camping World Stadium kickoff. This game will probably depend on if Lamar Jackson is there or not. If not, Louisville is going to have to break in a new quarterback and a neutral site against Alabama. That's never fun. Then the Tide come home and play a really tough Arkansas State team, travel to Ole Miss, then play A&M and UL Lafayette at home. Kind of surprised to see the Raging Cajuns, kind of on the schedule right here. Usually, the way Nick Saban likes to set up his schedule is big non-conference opponent on a neutral site field, then a group of five team, SEC play, FCS team, and then Auburn. To open up October, Alabama will travel out to Arkansas, play Missouri at home in I think that's Missouri's first trip to Tuscaloosa as an SEC school. Then they go to Tennessee, have their traditional bye, then play LSU, in Baton Rouge, host Miss State, host the Citadel, and then the Iron Bowl. Arkansas opens up at home against Eastern Illinois. They travel out to Colorado State, which is a pretty interesting road game for the Razorbacks to pick. Then they play North Texas at home, travel to Auburn, and then play Texas A&M in Arlington and Cowboy Stadium. The first 5 games of the season show Arkansas being spread across the country. They play a team from Illinois, they travel out to Colorado, they play a team from Texas, they go out to Alabama, then they play a team from Texas in Texas. It's just kind of interesting. Then they host Alabama, host Ole Miss, host Tulsa in a pretty weirdly timed game. Then they host Vanderbilt. So they're at home the entire month of October. They get a bye week, open up again at home against LSU, and then finish with 2 road games at Mississippi State and at Missouri. Arkansas fans, do you miss Friday games? Because I miss you having Friday games. As for the Auburn Tigers, they open up the regular season at a nice out-of-conference game in Atlanta against Washington. Hopefully, Washington won't get PTSD from their last trip to Atlanta to play an SEC school from Alabama. Then they have a home game against Alabama State, a really good early test against LSU at home, and then Arkansas at home, then Southern Miss at home. So the Auburn Tigers, in their 5 games in September, 4 of them are at home, and 1 is a neutral site right up 85 in Atlanta. Then they travel to Miss State, at home against Tennessee, and travel out to Ole Miss. I think this is a really favorable schedule, to be honest with you, before the bye week. A really nice bye week. I think the first half or so of this schedule, you have LSU and Arkansas at home, Washington on a neutral site, travel out to Mississippi State, but for the most part, I think that's a pretty fair and manageable schedule for you. Then you get A&M at home, travel out to Georgia, get Liberty at home to see what they can do against an SEC team after beating Baylor this year, which will probably be the entire bulletin board for Liberty before that game, then travel out to Tuscaloosa for the Iron Bowl. For LSU, they open up the season in a neutral site game at Cowboy Stadium against Miami. I love that scheduling. I think that is a really interesting game. I think it'll be really cool for those 2 teams to open up the schedule against each other when neither of them recently have had a whole lot of big time. Like, this is a big game, and neither of them have had a really big opening game for a while. LSU, I believe, played Oregon a couple years ago, played North Carolina, but this is a big game. This might be Miami's biggest non-conference opener in a while that I can remember anyway. They come home to play Southeastern Louisiana, travel out to Auburn in a big test early, play Louisiana Tech at home, and then Ole Miss to close out September. October will be an interesting one for LSU. They travel out to Florida. They play Georgia at home, a team they don't play that often. Then they play Mississippi State at home. They get that very nice bye week, which comes right off those 3 kind of, interesting swing games, at least it appears right now. Then they have their traditional bye week against Alabama, where they travel nowhere. Alabama comes to Baton Rouge. Then they go out to Arkansas, get a home game against Rice, then travel out to A&M. If you look at Mississippi State's schedule, they open up the season against Stephen F. Austin, travel out to Kansas State, which will be interesting. Vanderbilt just beat them, so I don't know if what that says about Kansas State or what that says about Vanderbilt just yet. They play UL Lafayette at home, travel out to Kentucky to stupid Kroger Stadium. Then they play Florida at home, which will be Dan Mullen's old coaching gig as a coordinator at Florida. Then they play Auburn at home, and then they get a bye week. I love the bye week right in the middle of the season. And then they travel to LSU. They get A&M at home. Louisiana Tech at home, travel out to Alabama, Arkansas, and then travel out to Ole Miss on Thanksgiving night. Interesting side note, it is currently the only SEC game scheduled on a non-Saturday. This is the Thursday night Thanksgiving game, and right now that's the only SEC game that's not on a Saturday. I do think that will change, but kind of interesting. As far as their counterparts in Ole Miss, they open up the season against Texas Tech in Houston. I think that is a really interesting game. Then they get Southern Illinois. Then they have a really, really kind of tough stretch here, relatively. Have a home game against Alabama. Have a home game against Kent State. Travel out to LSU. Home game against ULM. At Arkansas and against Auburn. I do think this will probably define the season, this stretch right here. How many of those SEC games can they win going into their bye week? It's my least favorite bye week, I think, in the SEC because you already have played Alabama, LSU, Arkansas, and Auburn out of the West. Then you get a bye week. Then you get a South Carolina team that this will only be your 7th meeting as SEC opponents. That's always kind of tricky for both teams. Then you travel out to A&M, out to Vanderbilt, and at home in the Egg Bowl. The season will probably be defined from the last half of September through October. Don't like that bye week at all. I would have liked, if I was an Ole Miss fan, for that to be a week or two earlier, but what are you going to do? Finally, you have Texas A&M. They open the season against Northwestern State. Then they have a home game against Clemson. Yikes. Then they play ULM. And then they travel out to Alabama. So they get Clemson and Alabama in, twice in 3 games. That is tough. Then they play Arkansas in Arlington in the Cowboys Stadium. Then Kentucky. Then at South Carolina. And then the bye week. So before the bye week, it is not awesome. They get 3 true home games, 2 road games, 1 against Alabama, 1 against South Carolina, and then the neutral site game. That's not really that favorable for A&M. Then they travel out to Miss State. They'll be coming off a bye week, traveling 2 weeks in a row. They won't play a home game for over a month. They come out of the bye week against Mississippi State and Auburn on the road. Then Ole Miss, UAB, and LSU at home to close out the season. So some final thoughts about the SEC West schedule. Week 1 is going to be really fun. Week 1 in the SEC East was kind of doo-doo. For the SEC West, Week 1 is going to be really fun. You have games against Washington and Texas Tech and Miami and Louisville. Week 2 is not going to be that great, except for A&M's game against Clemson and maybe Kansas State, Mississippi State. I think for the SEC West, more so than for the SEC East, because the West traditionally, at least the last decade or so, has been the much tougher division, the placement of the bye week could be very important. When a team gets some rest, what bookends a bye week? If you have an away game before a bye week and then 2 away games coming out, that is not really easy. That is going to, when you don't have a home game for over a month, it's a little tricky. And it is with that in mind that I have A&M as my toughest SEC West schedule. They get Clemson and Alabama, the last 2 national champions right now. There's an excellent chance one of them will win it again. There's an excellent chance both of them will be in the playoff again this year. They travel to South Carolina, to Auburn, and get LSU at home. That is a really, really tough schedule. If I had to pick the easiest in the West, it would probably be Auburn. It's hard to put any team that has to travel to Georgia and to Alabama as easy, but they get A&M at home. They play LSU and Arkansas at home, and their neutral site non-conference openers against a Washington team that I certainly don't think are the most unstoppable force in the world, and it'll be a de facto home game for Auburn. They are right up the road from Atlanta. There are plenty of Auburn grads in Atlanta. It's really kind of impossible to drive around the city without seeing a bunch of them. But yeah, so that is my quick opening thoughts. We're not even done with the first month of the 2017 season. All of this could change. I will talk about all of this again in the offseason with updates based on what we actually know about these teams, who's leaving. If Jake Browning is still there for Washington, that could be different than if he leaves. Those kind of things can impact these schedules greatly. But as of right now, let me know down in the comment section which games you're most excited for. Who do you think has the toughest schedule? Who do you think has the easiest schedule? And what does your team's schedule look like? Let me know down below. Thank y'all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. You can click the circle right there in order to subscribe or watch any of the other videos over there to the right that YouTube has suggested for you. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, until next time. Louisville is going to have to break in a new quarterback on a neutral site against Alabama. That's never fun. Then the Tide come home and play a really tough Arkansas State team, travel to Ole Miss, then play A&M and UL Lafayette at home. Kind of surprised to see the K FCS team and then Auburn. To open up October, Alabama will travel out to Arkansas, play Missouri at home in I think that's Missouri's first trip to Tuscaloosa as an SEC school. Then they go to Tennessee, have their traditional bye, then play LSU. So let's go ahead and look at the SEC West schedule and make sure to let me know what you think down in the comments at the end. So if we start with Alabama, they open the season against Louisville in Orlando at the Camping World Stadium kickoff. This game will probably depend on if Lamar Jackson is there or not. If not, the Raging Cajuns, excuse me, kind of on the schedule right here. Usually, the way Nick Saban likes to set up his schedule is big non-conference opponent on a neutral site field, then a group of five team SEC play. Hey Lifers, Dustin here, and today I want to take a look at the 2018 SEC West schedule. This schedule was released by the conference a couple of days ago for all teams in the conference. I already did a video that I just uploaded on the East, which you can check out right there.